Welcome to all of you. I am Prakash Reddy. Today we're discussing the topic that is the good hygienic practices in the food processing industry. This is the part 3. In this video discussion, you will learn what is the process of the raw material procurement, specific storage conditions and the storage room requirement, visitors management in the food processing industry, and how to avoid the cross contamination. These are the points discussed in this video discussion. Let's start one by one. The first point is that raw material procurement in the food processing industry. As per the specific storage conditions of the raw material, internal temperature and humidity is maintained throughout the storage of the raw material, and the stock rotation system in which the two main methods that must be required to follow. In the first, that is the first in first out, that is the whatever the first raw material is received, this first used for the processing, and whatever the prepared product as per their expiry they dispatch to outlet or maybe used in the processing. That means first expire first out in a processing system, and whatever the received raw material during the storage room, they must be required to store properly in during the storage to maintain the distance between the wall and the whatever the stock, that is the at least 18-inch distance. The internal storage system must be required to properly weatherproof ventilated room, which are the protected against the entry of the bird, insects and the rodents. These are the main points must required to consider with respect to the raw material procurement and the storage system. In the storage room system, some points should be required to consideration with respect to the specific raw material. In the first point, that is the storage room are designed with the segregation or the separation of the, that means the compartment are prepared for the separation of the product or on their specific properties, in which the specific compartment in which raw material, that is the raw foods, then processed foods, packed foods, rejected foods, returned or recalled food items, allergen materials, hazardous chemicals, then cleaning and disinfectants chemicals, semi-processed material, final product materials, then waste material. In this way, as per the specific requirement, we should require to properly uh, maintain the storage room with the compartment to store the whatever the prepared or the intermediate final product and allergen materials and whatever the chemicals. During the storage area, whatever the internal specific condition requirement in which the temperature and humidity is very important. In the freezing or the frozen storage system, internal temperature must be required to maintain throughout the storage below 18 degrees Celsius. Refrigeration system maintain temperature 4 degrees Celsius, and normal storage room as per the storage of the dry materials to maintain the internal temperature at least 37 degrees Celsius. This is the typical example of the storage room in which the specific compartments are prepared as per the compartment. The whatever the after receiving of the raw material, they are stored in this way. They are separated on the specific their applications and their properties. The raw materials which are stored into the pallets, tray, rack provide both cold storage and the dry storage solutions as per the requirement. Proper lighting system, then ventilation system, provided the refrigeration system to control the internal temperature and to also maintain the specific product requirement. That means the dry product should be required to stored under the dry conditions. A refrigerated product, frozen product are stored under the specific these conditions, and proper space maintained internally between the wall and the stocks. Also intermediate, all records are maintained, pest control records are maintained. Additional requirement in the storage room, you can see in this photo, these are the rodent and insect controlling devices must require to properly or the fixed in the inside and outside of the storage room. That means the rodent trapping devices, insect killing devices. These are the devices. Whatever the piping system, the piping outlet cover properly covered this pipe outside. Drainage system properly meshed and covered. In this way, control the pest and insect contamination or the entry of the paste into inside of the storage room. Then other requirement, that is to avoid the cross contamination, then prepare the checklist for the storage room, uh, follow the pest control practices, and to maintain the record to avoid the pest access and the accumulation in the storage room. In this way, properly maintain the storage room. Then second parameters, that is the visitors management in the food processing premises. In this first, the visitors who visit the food processing industry, first at least 10 to 15 minutes first required to training for them, do and does not in the food processing area. Before entry of the visitors into the processing area, must be required to properly wear the protective clothing, and also provide the visitor iCards and short-term training to what should be required to do or does not in the food processing area. Also required to display board to control the or to provide the specific information to the visitors. During entry of the visitors in the food processing premises, to arrange the supervisor to instruct the visitors and provide the special walk track for the visitors to view the processing line in the glass windows. In this way, to maintain the proper in the visitors management in the food processing industry. The next third point, that is the how to avoid the cross contamination in the food processing area. First, what is meant by cross contamination? Cross contamination, that means microbial loads or whatever the microbial loads which are present in the raw food. These raw foods microbial load are transferred from the surface of the food into the processing equipment and then transfer to the whatever the other processed food, semi-processed food, and they may be causes the food poisoning or the food illness. In the food contamination or the cross contamination system, there are the number of the ways in which the cross contamination may occur, in which the first, that is the food to food, that means whatever the allergen food to other food, or maybe during the washing and the cutting of the raw material, these microbial loads are transferred to the processing and the final product. Then second possibility is that paste to food, whatever the internal paste properly cover and whatever the food is prepared, they must be required to properly stored to avoid the contamination of the microbial load from the paste to food. Then third parameter, that is the chemical to food. That means whatever the chemicals, these chemicals are possibility to contaminate with the foods, in which they properly label the chemicals, properly store the chemicals, and they must be required to store separate from the food to avoid the cross contamination. And fourth one is the whatever the utilities, equipments, tools, and also hand, in which the this containing microbial loads which are contaminated to the food during the preparation of the raw material, processed food, final product. To maintain the proper hygiene and sanitation and proper hand washing practices in between the processing to avoid the cross contamination. The next point is that the cross contamination is the simple example in which the whatever the raw meat, fish, eggs, fruits and vegetables, untreated water, in which the containing microbial loads. This microbial loads possibility to transfer from the processed foods, then vegetables, meat and other prepared product. We must require to properly to avoid this cross contaminations. That means whatever the raw material, they must be prepared properly, and whatever the tools and equipments used, they are washed and then used for the final processing products. How to avoid the cross contamination during the preparation of the product, in which first hygienic practices, that is the hand washing practices during the preparation of the product. Then wash the all tools, food contact surface before and after use. Keep the raw allergen foods, ready to eat foods separate during the storage and the preparation. Don't use the same chopping board for the raw material, processed product, final product preparation. Don't let raw meat drip onto other foods. Keep all meat, poultry, fish, and the shellfish in separate container at the bottom of your fridge to avoid the cross contamination. The main source of the cross contamination is that mostly the raw meat, fish, poultry related product. In this way, we can avoid the cross contamination during the preparation of the product.